I, 35F, have been married to my husband, Paul, 40M, for almost 4 years. He always liked to brag that he finally settled down when he met me, as if he'd been some great bachelor prize on the market, instead of a grown man who still left socks in his car and forgot appointments like it was a competitive sport. Still, our relationship had felt stable, comfortable, safe. Maybe too safe, now that I think about it. His family always treated me politely. Never warm, never rude, just that surface-level niceness people use when they don't fully know where to place you. His mom once said, "You keep him grounded," which I thought was sweet at the time. Now it sounds more like, "Congratulations, you're the emotional babysitter." Things were fine until a few months ago. That's when the weirdness started. Paul got cagey with his phone, turning the screen away from me, setting a password, even though he used to joke that I was basically his walking Face ID. He started disappearing for errands that took 2 hours but resulted in absolutely nothing being purchased. He suddenly picked up late meetings, even though his workplace is literally known for employees sprinting to their cars at 5:01 p.m. And the attitude? Oh, he got bitchy. Not explosive. Paul doesn't do yelling. But he mastered this condescending, eye-rolling tone that made me feel like I was interrupting his fantasy life by simply existing. His new favorite line became, "You're acting needy. Is it because you're almost 36? Ah yes, the classic, weaponize her age, because you're hiding something tactic. I kept trying to rationalize it. He's 40. Maybe he's having a quiet midlife crisis. Maybe he's stressed. Maybe he's overwhelmed. What I didn't know was that while I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, he was giving his family a completely different story. A story where I manipulated him into marrying me. A story where he was pressured, trapped, cornered by a desperate woman terrified of being alone at 35. A story designed to make him look like the poor, helpless victim. So he could justify leaving me. Not for freedom. Not for finding himself. But because he wanted to marry someone else. And the first clue didn't come from him. It came from his sister. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of quiet, boring Sunday where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. I was at Paul's parents' house dropping off a birthday gift for his mom. Paul was too tired to come, which wasn't unusual anymore. His sister, Lena, was there too. Normally she's tolerable. Not warm, not cold, just a woman who has never quite approved of me, but doesn't want to look rude in front of her mom. We were making small talk in the kitchen while she iced cupcakes, and everything felt normal until she suddenly paused mid-sentence, lowered her voice, and said, "I know marriage is stressful, especially when it wasn't exactly your choice." I blinked. My what? She sighed dramatically, as if I was the one being dense. "You know, what Paul told us. How you pushed him into the wedding because you were worried about turning 35 and being single. That whole thing." I genuinely thought she was joking. I laughed, actually laughed, because the alternative was that I was having a stroke. But Lena didn't laugh. She looked at me with pity. Pity. I felt this icy drop run down my spine. "Lena," I said slowly, "I didn't push him into anything." She shrugged. "Well, that's what he said. He told us he felt pressured. Manipulated, I think was the word." That word hit me so hard it felt physical. Manipulated? Me? This is the same man who begged for us to move in together earlier. The same man who planned our proposal down to the restaurant and photographer. The same man who insisted we get married the following year because waiting feels pointless when you know it's right. Now he was telling his family I tricked him into it? I must have looked nauseous because Lena quickly added, "I mean, Paul gets dramatic sometimes. Maybe you guys just need space." Space? Or was space exactly what he'd already been taking behind my back? I left their house in a daze, my brain spinning with 1,000 questions. Why would he lie about something so huge? Why now? What was he trying to get out of this victim act? And then the most terrifying question of all, who was he telling the story for? When I got home, Paul wasn't there. Surprise. But his phone was charging on the kitchen counter. And that's when I noticed a notification. Just one. A preview from a name I didn't recognize. And the message made my stomach drop. "Did you talk to them yet? I don't want to marry a man who can't stand up for himself." My heart stopped. This wasn't stress. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't him needing space. This was someone else. And she wanted to marry my husband. I stared at that notification like it was a bomb about to go off. My first thought wasn't even anger. It was disbelief. Total, frozen, can't feel my hands disbelief. I picked up Paul's phone. It didn't have a fingerprint lock anymore. He'd removed it recently, claiming it glitches. But now I realize he probably thought I'd never dare touch it. Well, I dared. The phone opened immediately and the message thread unfolded like a crime scene. Her name was Marissa. Profile pic. Blonde, early 30s, too perfect smile. One of those girls who takes Pilates class at 6 a.m. because she's just naturally up early. Their messages went back months. Not weeks, months. And it didn't start innocent either. There was no slow flirtation. No work friend who accidentally got too close. No emotional affair creeping in sideways. This was a full-blown relationship. Romantic weekends. Dinner dates. Inside jokes. Arguments. Make-up voice notes. And then I saw the worst message. "Marissa, you said after the holidays you'd tell your family. They think you don't want to marry me. Fix it." Marry her. My husband, my actual married husband, was promising marriage to someone else. Then another message, sent just hours earlier. "Marissa, if your family thinks she manipulated you, then tell them the rest. I'm not marrying a man who can't handle his own life." And then his reply. "Paul, I will. They already believe she pressured me because of her age. I'll take care of the rest this week." My age. My F asterisk 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 INGH. I felt something inside me crack. Not like a clean break, more like a slow, splintering collapse. He wasn't just cheating. He was setting up a story, a narrative to justify, leaving me while looking like the poor innocent victim. And he wasn't doing it just to escape me. He was doing it to marry her. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone on the counter. I didn't cry. Not yet. I think the shock was holding the flood back like a dam about to burst. I sat down at the kitchen table, trying to breathe, when suddenly, as if the universe was mocking me, I heard keys in the front door. Paul walked in, happy, relaxed, whistling. And that's when everything snapped into place. The lies, the disappearing acts, the attitude, the manipulation narrative he'd planted with his family. He saw me sitting there and frowned like I had somehow inconvenienced him. Why are you just sitting there? You look crazy. 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 And for the first time in months, I felt something sharper than confusion. Something boiling hot. Something ready. Because now I knew exactly what he'd been doing behind my back. And he had no idea I'd seen everything. I didn't stand up when he walked in. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years, he didn't look familiar. He looked like a stranger wearing my husband's face. He tossed his keys in the bowl and grabbed a soda from the fridge like it was any other evening. Then he glanced at me again, slower this time, brow furrowing. Are you okay? I didn't answer. Instead, I slid his phone across the table toward him with one finger. He froze. Actually froze. Like a cartoon character about to get hit with an anvil. He swallowed hard. Why do you have my phone? I just raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. Read the last message. He didn't have to. His face already told me everything. He went pale, then red, then did that thing he always does when caught, squinted like I was the one being unreasonable. Wow. So you're snooping now? That's honestly really sad. I laughed. I actually laughed so loudly that he flinched. Snooping? Paul, your phone lit up with a message about marrying someone else. He opened his mouth, then shut it, then opened it again, like a very stupid, malfunctioning fish. I wasn't letting him speak first. You told your family I manipulated you into marrying me because I was desperate at 35. He winced. Okay, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Paul? He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his classic, I'm about to lie through my teeth stance. Look, I was trying to explain things to them in a way they'd understand. You know my family. They're dramatic. They love a narrative. A narrative you invented, I snapped. Babe, calm down. Don't, I said, slamming my palm on the table. Don't call me babe. His jaw twitched. Then he switched tactics, the confused puppy routine. I didn't say you manipulated me. I said you had strong feelings about marriage, and I didn't want to disappoint you. Oh, so now it's not manipulation but what? Pressure? Obligation? He shrugged helplessly. I mean, you were turning 35. I swear my soul momentarily left my body. And then, as if he sensed he needed to be even stupider, he added. And I only told them that because, I don't know, you're mad lately, so maybe it's because of hormones or age or whatever. Hormones. Age. Whatever. The audacity of this 40-year-old walking crisis in cargo shorts. I took a deep breath, trying not to launch the nearest piece of furniture at him. So, you didn't answer my question? I said. Who is Marissa? His face changed again, this time into pure panic. Okay. I can explain that. Go ahead. And then, this man delivered the dumbest explanation I have ever heard in my entire life. He said, She's just someone I talk to. She's going through stuff. I'm helping her. It's like charity. Charity. He called the woman he was planning to marry his charity project. I just stared at him. You take her on weekend trips as charity? He stuttered. That's okay, that part is complicated. Are you in love with her? I asked. He gulped so loud it echoed. I don't know. Yes. He knew. And yes, he was. But he couldn't say it because his brain was a smooth, shiny marble rolling inside an empty skull. I stood up slowly. I need you to leave for the night, I said. Go stay with your parents. He blinked like I'd suggested he launch himself into orbit. Why? This is overreacting. You're not even listening to my side. I saw your messages, Paul. Your side is typed out in full sentences. But he still tried one last classic Paul tactic. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Nothing. That was when the dam in my chest broke. Everything I'd held in, confusion, fear, betrayal, humiliation, surged forward at once. Get out. And for the first time, Paul realized I meant it. His face fell. His bravado cracked. His voice got small. Fine. He grabbed a small duffel bag, muttering under his breath like a sullen teenager grounded for breaking curfew. And before leaving, he turned back and said the most unbelievable line of the night. You know, if you weren't so emotional all the time, none of this would have happened. Then he left. And I stood in the kitchen, staring at the door he walked out through, realizing I didn't even know the man I married. Not really. But I was about to learn everything he'd been hiding. Paul hadn't even been gone 2 hours before my phone started blowing up. At first it was just one text from his mom. Then another. Then 6 missed calls from his sister, Lena. I ignored them. I wasn't in the emotional state to speak to anyone, much less the people Paul had been spoon-feeding lies to for months. But then my phone buzzed again with a message that made my blood boil. Lena, Paul told us what you did. I'm honestly disgusted. Manipulating him and going through his phone? You need help. Help. I finally snapped and called her back. She answered on the first ring, voice sharp like she'd been rehearsing. What did you do to him? He came here shaking, saying you're threatening him. Threatening? I cut in. No. I asked him to leave because he's cheating on me. Silence. Dead, stunned silence. Then Lena said the most Lena thing ever. That's impossible. Check his phone, I said. Check his messages with Marissa. She scoffed. He doesn't cheat. He told us you basically forced him into the marriage, and now you're trying to ruin his relationship with this girl because you can't handle being alone at your age. My age. There it was again, the narrative he'd planted like poison seeds. Lena, I said calmly, he's planning to marry her. He told her that. I saw the messages. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then she said something I didn't expect at all. Well, maybe he deserves to be with someone who didn't trap him. Trap. Trap. I felt something inside me harden. They didn't just believe him, they were defending him, backing him, coddling his lies. But the worst part wasn't Lena. It was the moment his mother called. Her voice was shaking, but not with anger, with disappointment. I thought you were good for him, she said softly. Good for him. I laughed bitterly. He's cheating on me. I'm not talking about that, she said. I'm talking about the manipulation. You knew Paul's history with girls pushing him. And you took advantage of how emotional he gets. Emotional? Paul? The man whose default setting is confusion and mild annoyance? That Paul? I realized then that he had been laying this groundwork for a long time. Maybe months. Maybe since the moment he met her. His mom kept talking, her voice rising with every sentence. You told him you didn't want to be single at 35. You pressured him. He was vulnerable. You should have known better. I cut her off. I'm done with this conversation. Check his messages. Then call me. And I hung up. I stood in the living room, feeling oddly steady. Their opinions didn't hurt me anymore. Not like they would have months ago. Because now I understood something crystal clear. Paul had been building a safety net before betraying me. He made sure to fall into his family's arms as the victim, instead of facing the consequences of his cheating. He wasn't just lying to me. He was rewriting our entire relationship to justify replacing me. And they were eating it up like free dessert. But what Paul didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had evidence. The messages. Screenshots. Dates. Receipts. And I wasn't done uncovering the truth yet. Because the next day, I found something much, much worse. Something that made every lie he'd told feel small in comparison. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my entire life was rearranged overnight. My husband was gone. His family hated me. Everyone thought I was some desperate, manipulative 35-year-old gremlin who tricked poor, confused 40-year-old Paul into marriage. And honestly, I thought that was the worst it could get. But I was wrong. Because the universe wasn't done throwing plot twists at me. After the chaos from the night before, I decided I needed to gather every bit of evidence I had. Not out of spite, but because something in my gut told me this wasn't just an affair. There was more. The lies weren't random. They were strategic. So I grabbed Paul's old laptop. The one he never used anymore because it was too slow and probably broken. Translation. He forgot it existed. I powered it on. It still worked. And the man never bothered setting a password. Within minutes, I was scrolling through his files. Mostly boring stuff, work documents, tax forms, a few embarrassing selfies from 2017. But then I saw it. A folder tucked inside another folder, mislabeled like a child trying to hide cookies behind broccoli. Work receipts. Paul doesn't submit receipts at work. He gets a fixed stipend. Always has. My hands went cold. I opened it. Inside were screenshots of messages with Marissa, going back 14 months. Pictures of them together. Hotel confirmations. A screenshot of a cash transfer. And the thing that made my stomach drop, a typed document. Titled, Plan for Clean Transition. What the hell was that? I clicked it. And then I realized exactly how deep the betrayal went. The document wasn't some random note. It was a step-by-step outline. Step 1. Create emotional distance to avoid escalation. Step 2. Make family aware she pressured me into the marriage. Step 3. Clarify that she fears being alone at her age. Easy angle for mom. Step 4. Document examples of her being controlling so I have reasons. Step 5. Move finances to separate account before anything happens. Step 6. Don't blame her. Blame circumstance. Makes me look kinder. Step 7. After leaving, introduce Marissa gradually. Say it happened after the split. Step 8. Mom will take my side if she thinks wife manipulated me. Step 9. Don't reveal relationship until family is softened. Step 10. End clean. No drama. I sat there, staring, reading it over and over. My brain refused to believe it. This wasn't a man who just made a mistake. This wasn't a confused husband, or an impulsive cheater, or a midlife crisis idiot. This was premeditated. A whole damn blueprint. Paul didn't just cheat on me. He planned an exit strategy, like I was a business he needed to divest from. He wasn't confused. He wasn't manipulated. He wasn't scared. He was organized, calculated, strategic. He wanted to leave me for another woman, but he wanted to make sure he looked like the victim in the process. My hands were shaking so hard I had to set the laptop down, because every bullet point felt like a knife he'd already stabbed into my back. And the worst part? He wasn't even smart about it. He wrote his entire villain plan like he was journaling for a therapist he couldn't afford. But that wasn't the worst part. Not even close. Because as I kept scrolling, I found out what Step 11 was. And Step 11 changed everything. I swear, I stared at the screen for a full minute before I could bring myself to click. Step 11. The final step. The one he hadn't followed yet. It was like standing in front of a locked door in a horror movie. You know something awful is behind it, but you open it anyway. So I opened it. Step 11 said, file for divorce first to maintain narrative control. If needed, claim she was emotionally unstable and pressured me. Keep it clean to avoid alimony complications. My vision actually blurred. Not from tears, from pure, visceral disbelief. He was planning to divorce me. And make sure he didn't have to pay me a dime. And pin the entire thing on me. This little bitchy 40-year-old man wrote an entire tactical playbook like he was planning a military operation instead of ending a marriage. I felt my breath catch in my throat. My hands went ice cold. My ears were ringing so loudly, I didn't hear my phone buzzing until the 5th vibration. I picked it up. It was Paul. Of course. I didn't answer. Then a text popped up. Hey babe, you home? Babe. This man had a whole divorce ambush planned in a Word document, and he still had the nerve, the audacity, to drop a casual babe. Another text. Listen, we need to talk later. Don't freak out. Oh, I was way past freak out. I was at the mental place people go when they flip a Monopoly board. Just as I'm processing this, I hear something outside. A car door. Footsteps. Quick ones. I walked to the window, and there he was, Paul, sprinting up the driveway like a man who realized he left the oven on. Still in yesterday's clothes. Hair all over the place. Face red like he'd been yelling or crying or lying. Honestly, with him, those are all interchangeable. He banged on the front door. Open up. We need to talk. Oh, so now he wants to talk. Now. While my hands were still on the laptop containing his evil master plan. I didn't open the door. Not yet. Instead, I watched him through the peephole, pacing, muttering to himself, running his hands through his hair. The anxiety dripping off him was delicious. Because he knew. He knew something had gone wrong. Then I heard it. He wasn't even quiet. He said it out loud. Damn it. She must have found the laptop. Bingo. Not I'm worried about her. Not I'm scared she'll misunderstand. Not I messed up. No. He was worried because I found the evidence of his scheme. He knocked again. Harder. We can fix this. Just let me explain. Explain what? That he wrote a 3-act villain monologue? That he tried to paint me as some desperate woman so he could run off with Miss Side Piece 2024? That he planned to divorce me and walk away spotless? My heartbeat was pounding, but I forced myself to stay quiet. Then, he did something that made my skin crawl. He tried the doorknob. Twisted it. Hard. Locked, obviously. He sighed, loudly. Dramatically. Then said under his breath, why does she always make things difficult? Always. Make. Things. Difficult. Like, I was the inconvenience. Not his lies. Not his cheating. Not his covert marriage exit PowerPoint. Me. I stepped back from the peephole, adrenaline spiking. Because, in that moment, I realized something. Paul wasn't going to talk his way out of this. He wasn't going to sweet talk, gaslight, or manipulate me back into submission. He wasn't going to keep controlling the narrative. This time, I had the narrative. I had the laptop. I had the receipts. I had every step of his plan. And if he thought he could still twist this, he had no idea what was coming next. Paul stopped banging eventually, but the pacing continued, little angry stomps back and forth on the front porch like a toddler denied a juice box. I stayed silent. Not a sound. I wanted him to sweat. And oh boy, did he. After a minute, he switched tactics. He knocked again, softer this time like he suddenly remembered humans have emotions. Honey, please, can we not do this today? Not do what today, Paul? Discover your villain origin story? He kept going. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I can explain everything if you just open the door. Misunderstanding. Right. I walked quietly back to the laptop. There was one folder I hadn't opened yet. It was labeled backup. Always check the backup. Inside were screenshots. Screenshots he took from his phone. Screenshots of messages. Screenshots he clearly planned to show someone someday. My guess? His lawyer. Or his side piece. The first one was a chat between him and her. Her, how long you gonna stay with her? Paul. Not long. I just need the timing to look right. Her. What about your family? Paul. I already told them, she rushed me into marriage. They'll support me. Her. LOL, you're crazy. Paul. I know, but it works. I felt a chill run all the way down my spine. That crazy wasn't even an insult. It was flirty. She liked the scheme. And Paul? He was loving the attention. He was performing. Playing the victim. Playing the mastermind. Playing whatever role got him the most validation at the moment. Then came the kicker, the message that made my jaw drop. Paul. Once everything's in motion, I'll be free. Just gotta keep her calm until then. Free. Free. From me. His wife. The person who worked while he bounced between jobs like they were trampoline parks. The person who paid the bills when he forgot his wallet. The person who stood by him while he had his little midlife crisis disguised as a spiritual awakening. It was like reading the diary of a stranger. A stranger who really, really sucked. I snapped my laptop shut just as Paul knocked again. Harder this time. Seriously, open the door. We need to talk before someone gets the wrong idea. Wrong idea. The wrong idea? Paul, you typed the right idea in 12-point Times New Roman. I finally spoke, loudly enough for him to hear through the door. I know everything. Silence. Dead silence. Then footsteps. Then his voice, shaky. Everything what? This man. This grown 40-year-old man, pretending confusion like a child who's been caught with chocolate on his face claiming he didn't eat any cookies. I didn't open the door, but I said it clearly. Your plan. Your messages. Your lies. I saw all of it. Then, I swear to God, Paul whimpered, like an actual soft little sound. Okay, wait, he said. Let's slow down. You're taking things out of context. Taking things out of context. Classic Paul. If the house burned down, and he was holding a lighter, he'd still blame the wiring. He tried again. Look, I might have written some stuff, okay? But I never meant it. Paul, I said, you literally labeled things steps. Steps you were following. Another silence. Then the weakest excuse I have ever heard from a human adult. Those were drafts. 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 Like he was writing a screenplay? Like he was testing out dialogue? Like this was some kind of warm-up exercise? I actually laughed, loud enough that he heard it. He tried to regain control, but his voice was cracking. Listen, can you please open the door? This is all spiraling, and you're making it worse. No, Paul, I said. You made it worse. Silence. Then, can we at least talk like adults? Adults? The man wrote a 12-step guide on how to ditch your wife without paying alimony. I took a deep breath, because the next thing I was about to do would change everything. I walked to the front door, put my hand on the lock, and said, I'll open the door, Paul, but you're not going to like what happens next. My hand was actually shaking when I unlocked the door, not because I was scared of Paul, but because I'd finally reached the moment where everything would be said out loud. I opened it, slowly, quietly. Paul stood there looking messy, hair sticking up, dark circles under his eyes, shirt wrinkled like he slept in someone else's bed, breathing like he sprinted the whole way over. When he saw me, he forced a smile, the fakest, most strained thing I've ever seen on a grown man. There she is, he said like he'd just found a lost dog. We can talk now. Ugh. Already annoying. I stepped aside, wordless. He entered the house, looking around nervously like the walls might be recording him. Honestly, they didn't need to. I had everything. He stood in the middle of the living room, rubbing his hands together like he was warming up for a full Olympic-level gaslighting routine. So, he said, what exactly did you see? Not, I'm sorry. Not, this looks bad, I know. Not, let me explain myself. No. What exactly did you see? Translation. What do I need to lie about specifically? I crossed my arms. The steps, Paul. The messages. The plan. The girl. Everything. His face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive. But then, as expected, he recovered with an excuse, so weak it could have been blown away by a sigh. Honey, it wasn't your misunderstanding. It's not what it looks like. I tilted my head. Then what is it? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, then said, it was a joke. A joke. This 40-year-old man thought he could convince me that a 12-step divorce plan with folder backups and labeled evidence was a joke. I almost applauded him for the effort. Almost. Paul, I said, you plan to leave me for her. You told your family I manipulated you into marrying me. You said you needed timing and narrative control. You literally rehearsed cheating like it was a TED Talk. His jaw tightened. He looked angry that I wasn't buying the stupidity. I didn't mean any of that, he snapped. You know how I get when I'm stressed. I say things. I write things. I vent. Who were you venting to? I asked. Your lawyer? Your girlfriend. The second I said girlfriend, his whole face twitched. His mouth opened, and he looked ready to deny everything. But then something unexpected happened. He didn't. He froze. Eyes darting left, right, anywhere except me. Breathing heavier. Hands shaking now, not from anger, from panic. He finally whispered, how much do you know? That. That right there. That's how you know someone is guilty. Only guilty people ask, how much do you know? I stepped closer. Close enough that he had to look at me. I know enough, Paul. And right then, he broke. Not emotionally. Not remorsefully. He broke in the worst, most predictable, most bitchy Paul way possible. He threw his hands in the air and shouted, fine. I liked her, okay? I was confused. Confused. This man bought her gifts, made plans, lied to his family, and wrote a divorce strategy document. But he was confused. Besides, he added, trying desperately to regain control. It's not like I did anything yet. Paul, I said, you called her baby girl yesterday. His eyes widened. Oh. He looked down at his feet. So you saw that? Oh. So, I saw that. This man was not sorry. This man was not confused. This man was not trying to fix anything. This man was trying to figure out how much trouble he was in. I felt something in me shift. Something big, something final. Because in that moment I realized, Paul wasn't someone you reason with. He wasn't someone you save. He wasn't someone who ever planned to love me the way I loved him. He was someone who thought lying was easier than honesty. Someone who blamed me for the mess he made. Someone who believed he could scheme, cheat, manipulate, and still have me come crawling back. Not anymore. I took a slow breath and said, I'm done, Paul. He froze again. What do you mean done? Oh boy. He was about to find out exactly what I meant. Paul blinked at me like I'd spoken a language he'd never heard before. Done? What do you mean done? I swear. He looked genuinely confused, as if after planning a whole step-by-step guide to ditch your wife, he still believed I'd be clinging to him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. I just said, calmly. Done with you. Done with the marriage. Done covering for you. Done pretending you're someone you're not. Paul's face dropped. Like it physically sagged. His mouth opened. Then closed. Then opened again. Honestly, he looked like a fish who'd been smacked with the reality of land. You can't just say that, he finally sputtered. You're overreacting. We're just going through a rough patch. Rough patch. A rough patch. Paul, I said, a rough patch is forgetting an anniversary. Not plotting an exit strategy like you're on Survivor, Marriage Edition. He ran his hand through his hair aggressively. That's not fair, he snapped. I haven't even had a chance to explain myself. You mean lie more? I said. He made this noise. Half offended gasp, half toddler meltdown. Why do you always assume the worst of me? I bit back a laugh. The worst? Sir, I saw the worst. You typed it in bullet points. He kept rambling. You're acting like I cheated. I never cheated. Oh. So we were at that stage of the denial Olympics. You emotionally cheated, I said. You made plans. You fantasized. You wrote steps. You invested in her emotionally. You lied to me. You lied to your family. You lied to yourself. And you lied about me, I added, voice sharp now, to make her feel comfortable. He flinched. There it was, the truth landing heavier than he expected. But he still didn't stop. Of course not. This was Paul. He pointed at me like I was the villain in a story. If you leave me, he said, everyone will think you really did manipulate me. Paul, I said slowly, everyone will know the truth when I show them the files. His face went pale, completely white, like he'd seen a ghost. Or a consequence. You wouldn't, he whispered. Not asked. Stated. Begged. Oh, but I would. Not out of pettiness. Not out of revenge. But because he had built a narrative about me that was so disgusting, so insulting, so selfish. And he thought it would protect him. He'd forgotten something important. I'm not afraid of the truth. He is. So I said, I'm showing them whatever I need to show. He gasped, actually gasped. My family will hate me. I looked him dead in the eyes. Maybe you should have thought of that before spreading lies about me and planning to leave. He stepped closer. Too close. Voice dropping to a pathetic, panicked whisper. You can't leave me. You can't. You can't. I won't have anywhere to go. Wow. There it was. Not love. Not remorse. Not regret. Just fear of losing comfort. Just fear of losing a home. A maid. A stabilizer. A wife-shaped emotional punching bag. You should have thought about that too, I said. Come. Unshaken. Then I walked toward the front door, opened it, and gestured outside. You need to go now. His head jerked back. What? No. No, I'm not leaving. I live here. Not anymore. You can't do this. I already did. He stared at me, wide-eyed, breathing fast, like a man watching his entire safety net unravel thread by thread. Then he whispered the most ironic thing he could have possibly said. You're ruining everything. I stared right back at him. No, Paul. I'm ending what you ruined. And then, without another word, I stepped back. He hesitated. But eventually, with trembling hands and a face full of panic, he stepped outside. I shut the door, locked it, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Paul, outside, shouted something. I didn't hear it, didn't care. Because inside, in the quiet, I already knew, this was far from over. Paul wasn't done causing problems. Men like him never are. But I wasn't scared of him anymore. Not even a little. Paul didn't leave. Of course he didn't. He stood on the porch like a malfunctioning garden gnome, pacing back and forth, muttering to himself. Every few seconds he'd stop and bang on the door again. We're not done. You can't just lock me out. His voice cracked on the last word. He wasn't angry anymore. He was terrified. Terrified of consequences. Terrified of losing comfort. Terrified of facing the truth without someone to twist it for him. I stayed in the kitchen, watching him through the side window like he was a raccoon rummaging through trash. Annoying but ultimately pathetic. After a few minutes of muttering and stomping, he tried a new tactic. The pitiful husband who just wants understanding. He knocked lightly. Pathetically. I just need you to listen, he begged through the door. We made vows. You can't just throw that away because I made mistakes. Mistakes. He downgraded creating a 12-step escape plan to a mistake. Adorable. But then he said something that made me pause. Not because I believed him, but because it was the first time he dropped the mask completely. In a low, panicked voice. Please. I can't go home. I can't go to her. I don't know where to go. Ah. There it was. The truth. He wasn't fighting for the marriage. He was fighting for a place to land. Because the other woman? She wasn't taking him in. Of course she wasn't. Mistresses like the fantasy, not the full-time responsibility. Paul, I said through the door, that sounds like a you problem. He suddenly exploded. You made me like this. Oh. Oh ho ho. We entered the blame the wife for my sins phase. Cute. I didn't respond. Silence is powerful. He kept yelling for another minute, but it fizzled fast. He sounded exhausted. Lost. Panicking. Then, another shift. The darkest one so far. His voice dropped. Cold. Flat. Like he was talking to himself more than me. You don't understand what you're doing, he murmured. If you tell them what you saw, my family will cut me off. My job will judge me. They'll think I'm some manipulative monster. Bit late for that revelation, Paul. Then he added, almost whispering. They'll hate me. Everyone will hate me. I didn't say it, but in my mind I thought, Actions have consequences. You taught me that. He kept spiraling. You're trying to ruin my life. You want me homeless. You want me to fail. You want everyone to think I'm garbage. For a moment, his voice cracked again. It almost sounded like guilt. Almost. But then he muttered something that chilled me more than all his yelling put together. I can't let that happen. Let that happen. His tone wasn't sad or scared anymore. It was determined, resolute, like he'd made a decision in his own head, one he wasn't fully saying out loud. I moved closer to the window, watching him. His face had gone blank, eyes distant, jaw clenched, and then he walked off the porch, slowly, calmly, not toward his car, not toward a neighbor, just down the street. No jacket, no keys, nothing, just walking. In that eerie, robotic way people do when they're not really thinking, just reacting. I didn't know where he was going, but I knew one thing. Whatever he was planning now wasn't good, because desperate men don't get smarter. They get dangerous. Paul wasn't disappearing. Paul was plotting, and something told me his next step wasn't in that Word document. It was going to be worse, much worse. After Paul walked down the street like some kind of glitching NPC, I stayed frozen at the window, watching him shrink into the distance. Every instinct in me screamed that something was off. This wasn't the stomp and shout routine he usually performed when caught lying. This was different. Too calm. Too calculated. Too quiet. That silence? That's what scared me. Because men like Paul, men who lie as easily as they breathe, don't just walk away. They circle. They regroup. They return with a new angle, a new story, a new manipulation. I went around the house, checking locks. Not because I was afraid of him hurting me, but because I was afraid of him doing something stupid and then blaming me for it. 10 minutes passed. 20. 30. No sign of him. No calls. No texts. Nothing. Just that terrible, suffocating quiet. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, but I was so on edge, I kept dropping things. My brain was spiraling with all the what-ifs. What if he went to the other woman? What if he went to his family? What if he was trying to spin this first? What if he was doing something destructive out of panic? What if he planned to show up later, acting like the victim? I didn't like any of those options. After an hour, I finally sat down on the couch, trying to breathe. I had barely exhaled when, knock, knock, knock. My heart actually jumped. I stood up, walked to the door slowly, and looked through the peephole. Not Paul. Not his family. Not the other woman, thank God. 2 uniformed police officers. Standing on my porch. Just like that. My stomach dropped. Because my brain went straight to the worst possible scenario. Had he called them? Was he trying to claim something happened here? Was he trying to flip the narrative that fast? I opened the door carefully. Ma'am, one of them said. Are you Mrs. Albright? I nodded. Yes. The other officer stepped forward, holding a small notebook. We're looking for your husband, Paul. We were told he might have come here. Do you know his whereabouts? And instantly, my blood ran cold. Not because I didn't know where he was, but because I suddenly realized something. Paul didn't just walk away. He'd been somewhere else first. And whatever he did there, the police now knew about it. My mind raced. Had he gone to his family and started drama? Had he gotten into a fight? Had he tried to involve the other woman? Had he staged something ridiculous to make himself look like the victim? With Paul? Any of those were possible. Ma'am, the officer asked again. We need to know if he's been here. I swallowed hard. Yes, I said, he was here earlier. But he left on foot about an hour ago. The 2 officers exchanged a look that said something happened. And it wasn't small. Is everything okay? I asked carefully. The officer with the notebook sighed. We're not sure yet. His family reported some concerning behavior. They said he sounded panicked, unstable. Said he told them. He stopped, glancing at me like he wasn't sure if he should finish the sentence. That he was afraid you were going to ruin his life. I felt my chest tighten. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Of course he did. Of course he said that. Playing the martyr to the very end. But then the officer added something even worse. They also said he made statements that sounded potentially self-harm related. We need to locate him before he does something dangerous. My breath caught. Not out of love. Not out of grief. Out of sheer disbelief. Paul. The man who created a step-by-step plan to leave me for another woman without paying a cent. The man who lied to his family, to me, to himself. The man who tried to blame me for his mess. He was now trying to weaponize panic and possibly self-harm as a final manipulation tactic. But the officer wasn't done. We also need to ask you some questions, he said gently. It appears you may have been a central part of what triggered his episode. My eyes narrowed. Triggered. Triggered what? I suddenly felt it in my gut. Paul had told them something about me. Something big. Something stupid. Something dangerous. I stepped aside to let the officers in, my heart pounding. Because I knew, whatever Paul had done next was no accident. And it was coming straight for me. The officers stepped inside, wiping their boots on the mat like this was just another welfare check. But nothing about this felt normal. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to clasp them together just to hide it. We sat down in the living room, me on the couch, the 2 officers on the chairs across from me. They both had that careful, neutral look cops use when they're trying not to spook someone. I already hated it. Mrs. Albright, the notebook officer began, we need to clarify a few details about your interaction with your husband today. I nodded, swallowing. Of course. He flipped a page. His family told us Paul called them earlier in a state of panic. He said. He paused again. I could feel the dread crawling up my spine. He said you admitted you only married him because you were terrified of being alone at 35. My jaw tightened. Unbelievable. Humiliating. Predictable. But that wasn't even the punchline. The officer continued. He also told them you were threatening to expose personal information about him and that you might lash out if he tried to leave. I blinked. For a moment, I genuinely thought he had the wrong house. Then it sank in. Paul wasn't just lying. He was building a case. A narrative. A false trail of victimhood. In case his affair blew up publicly, or in case the other woman found out he was lying to her too. A preemptive excuse for everything he'd been doing. A way to blame me for his mess. He told them that? I asked, stunned. The cop nodded sympathetically. They were worried he might be in danger emotionally or mentally, so they reported it. We're not accusing you of anything, we're just trying to understand the context. I put my hands on my forehead. None of that is true, I said. Absolutely none of it. Paul, I mean, he lies. A lot. He lies about things he doesn't even need to lie about. The officers exchanged a glance like they'd heard that before. Did you have a fight today? Yes, I said instantly. Because I found out he's been planning to leave me for another woman. That got their attention. Both officers sat forward. And when I confronted him about it, I continued. He froze, denied it, then left. That's it. I never threatened him. I didn't say anything even close to that. Notebook officer scribbled something down. The other one asked, do you know who the other woman is? I shook my head. Not yet. But I suspect he's been seeing her for a while. They both nodded solemnly, the way people do when they suddenly understand exactly the kind of man someone is. The room was quiet for a moment. Then notebook officer took a breath and said, well, there's something else. My whole body tensed. Okay. Paul's car was found abandoned about an hour ago at the edge of Willow Creek. His phone was in it. My stomach dropped. Not from fear for him, but from dread about whatever performance he was staging. We don't know if this is a genuine crisis or an attempt to avoid something, the officer said. But given what he told his family, we have to treat it as serious. I stared at them, trying to process this. Trying to understand how a grown 40-year-old man could lie so badly, so recklessly, that the police were now involved. Mrs. Albright, the officer said gently, is there anything you haven't told us? Anything that might help us locate him? I opened my mouth, then froze. Because suddenly, in a sickening flash, I remembered something Paul said earlier that morning. Something I brushed off. Something stupid. Something that now felt horrifying. He'd said, if I disappear one day, you'll probably be blamed for it. At the time I'd rolled my eyes. But now? Now it felt like foreshadowing. And not the subtle kind. My blood went cold. What if this wasn't about the affair? What if this wasn't about the other woman? What if Paul's disappearing act wasn't panic, but a setup? What if he wanted me to take the fall for something he planned to fake? For something dramatic enough that she, the other woman, would swoop in to save him? The officers watched me closely. Ma'am, I swallowed hard. I think I might know where he went. Their pens froze. Where? I took a deep breath. And said the one place Paul always went when he wanted to feel sorry for himself. And where something very bad could be staged easily. I told the officers the one place I knew Paul would go when he wanted attention, drama, or a stage to perform on. The old quarry overlook. It's this abandoned, half-fenced-off cliffside that teens used to sneak into for drinking and adults like Paul used for brooding. He loved going there whenever he felt misunderstood. Or whenever he needed to clear his head. Or, more realistically, whenever he wanted to feel like the tragic main character of his own movie. The cops stiffened immediately. They exchanged that look people give each other when they know something is about to turn ugly. We need to go there now, one of them said, already standing. And here's the part that made my skin crawl. They asked if I wanted to come. Usually they don't do that unless they think someone will need to identify something. Or someone. I almost said no. Every instinct in my body wanted to curl up on the couch and pretend none of this was real. But then I remembered. Paul put himself here. Paul dragged me into this mess. Paul lied to everyone, including the police, to make me look unhinged. If this was another one of his poor me theatrics, I wasn't letting him control the narrative again. So I grabbed my coat and went. The officers drove in front of me, and I followed behind in my car. The entire drive was fogged with dread. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept imagining the worst, and not because I loved him enough to be terrified. No. It was fear of the mess he was about to drop on my life like a bomb. Fear of what kind of disaster a 40-year-old man-child could create when cornered. When we finally pulled up to the quarry, my heartbeat went straight into my throat. The area was flooded with flashing lights. 2 police SUVs. A fire truck. An ambulance. An ambulance. My stomach twisted so violently I had to brace myself on my car door. One of the officers from earlier jogged up to me. We found him. He's alive. Alive. But the officer's face didn't look relieved. He looked annoyed. Almost embarrassed on Paul's behalf. What happened? I asked. He sighed. Hard. Like he'd rehearsed the sentence in his head but still hated saying it. Your husband called emergency services claiming you were trying to emotionally destroy him, and he was on the verge of throwing himself off the cliff. My eyes went wide. He what? The officer nodded. But when we got here, he was sitting on a rock 10 feet from the parking lot eating a gas station sandwich. I blinked. My mouth dropped open. A laugh bubbled out. Not the funny kind, the hysterical kind you can't control. The officer continued, stone-faced. He told responders he was too emotionally exhausted to jump, but he wanted us to see how serious he would have been. I swear to God, I felt my soul attempt to exit my body. He used the phrase, the officer added, checking his notes, Symbolic despair. Of course he did. That was exactly the level of dramatic stupidity that Paul specialized in. Then the officer lowered his voice. He also tried to blame you again. Said you pushed him to this point. But when we asked for specifics, he got flustered and said, I don't know. She's just like mean. I covered my face with both hands. I couldn't even cry. I couldn't even scream. I was too busy being mortified by secondhand embarrassment. They led me to where Paul was sitting in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket he definitely didn't deserve. He looked up at me with big, pitiful eyes like a toddler waiting to be scolded. Oh good, you're here, he said, voice raspy like he'd been crying he wasn't. Did the officers tell you how I almost died? I stared at him, blank, hollow. You were eating a turkey sandwich, I deadpanned. He blinked. It was ham. And that was the moment I realized I no longer loved him. Not even a little. Not enough to care if he embarrassed himself. Not enough to save him from the wreckage of his own idiocy. One of the paramedics whispered to another. God, I'd fake my own death too, if I were married to him. And I nearly choked trying not to laugh. Paul huffed dramatically. I was in crisis, okay? I was expressing the depth of my emotional suffering. You called 911 to perform a sad monologue, I said flatly. He gasped like I'd stab him. You don't understand me at all. No. Not anymore. Not ever again. The police finally stepped in to speak with him, and I stepped away to breathe. But as I stood there, watching the spectacle he created, a cold, sinking realization washed over me. Paul didn't just lie. He escalated. He fabricated danger. He involved the police. He blamed me for everything. And he wasn't done. Because before they put him in the police car for psychiatric evaluation, he asked something that made my blood freeze. Will she be arrested if I say she caused all this? The officer told him no. But the fact he tried, that was the moment I knew. The officers kept Paul at the quarry for another 20 minutes, mostly because he refused to stop talking. Every time they tried to wrap things up, he launched into another melodramatic speech. About how misunderstood he was. How emotionally unsafe he felt. How I used manipulation tactics, his new favorite phrase, to trap him. One of the paramedics finally whispered. He should be charged for wasting everyone's time. And honestly, for once, I agreed with a stranger about my husband completely. Eventually, they placed him in the back of a patrol car, not under arrest, but for a mandatory psychological evaluation because he faked a crisis call. He sat there with his blanket and his pout, looking like a child who'd been denied candy. Before they shut the door, he turned to me dramatically. You don't care about me at all, do you? And something inside me snapped so cleanly it felt surgical. No, Paul, I said quietly. I really don't. His jaw dropped. He looked genuinely shocked, like the possibility had never crossed his mind, even though he'd done everything possible to carve that feeling out of me. The officer closed the door. The police car pulled away. And just like that, Paul was someone else's problem for the next 72 hours. I stood there in the cold quarry wind, lights still flashing around me, and I realized I felt relief. Real, physical, bone-deep relief. Like I'd been underwater for months and finally surfaced. When I got home, I did something I'd been too scared, too sad, or too hopeful to do before. I packed a bag. Not for him. Not for, maybe I'll stay with a friend. Not for temporary space. For leaving. For good. Then I did something else that felt even better. I called Paul's mother. She answered in a rush. Oh God, do they know where he is? We were so worried. He said you threatened him, and I cut her off gently, but firmly. No. He lied. He staged the entire thing. He called 911 from a picnic rock while eating lunch. She went silent. Completely silent. Then she whispered, oh my God, his father is going to lose it. I didn't even correct her. Let them deal with him. Let them finally see the man behind the stories he fed them. But she wasn't done. Because then she said something that nearly made my knees buckle. I think I know who the woman is. My breath caught. Who? And when she said the name, it was like the entire room tilted, because it wasn't a stranger. Not even close. It was someone who had been at our wedding. Someone who hugged me. Someone I had been kind to. Someone who, according to his mother, Paul had been talking to for over a year. Behind my back. While painting me as the villain. Sudden events. Sudden truths. Sudden clarity. And suddenly, I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. The next morning I visited the police station to give a statement. The full, unfiltered truth. Every lie he'd told. Every manipulation. Every fabrication. Every attempt to paint me as dangerous, while he was the one staging emergencies. The detective listening actually rolled his eyes at one point and muttered, he's going to end up paying fines for this. Good. Let him pay. For the lies. For the chaos. For the embarrassment. For dragging me through humiliation after humiliation while planning a shiny new life with another woman. Let him feel the consequences for once. When Paul was released from evaluation, he called me repeatedly. First crying. Then yelling. Then bargaining. Then threatening to tell everyone what I did. I didn't answer. Not once. Not ever again. Instead, I left him a single message through my lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Good luck explaining everything to your girlfriend, your parents, and the police. You'll need it. Conclusion. Here's what I learned. You can love someone deeply and still not see who they truly are until the lies stack so high they collapse on both of you. Some people don't want partners. They want scapegoats. They want someone to blame when their own immaturity catches up to them. And the second you stop playing along, Their fantasy world crumbles. If anyone reading this is struggling with a partner who lies, twists reality, or makes you feel like you're losing your mind, please listen. Get out while the bridge is still halfway intact. Because one day they will burn it, and they will blame you for the fire. I saved myself in time. And now, Paul is the one facing the fallout he created. The legal trouble, the family embarrassment, the girlfriend discovering the truth. His secrets aren't just catching up to him, they're dragging him down. And for the first time in a long time, I'm free.